Tom Downey here once again for Bengals Breakdown. On today's show, we're taking a look at several different surprise cut candidates for the Bengals. Now, they've got plenty of salary cap space, but we also know this is a team that likes to roll over plenty, and with multiple moves made during the NFL draft, the DFA process, despite having some spots open, I don't think it would be a surprise to several if some notable names got cut, whether it's now, after June 1st, or certainly closer to roster cut down time. Before we get to my list, which does feature, I think, a pretty big name to start, name a player who you think ends up getting cut. Try to focus on the bigger names. You know, you don't need to mention the fifth string running back, but name a notable player who you think could get cut by Cincinnati. First up on the list, look, it says surprise, it's B.J. Hill. Now, entering the offseason, DJ Reader, a free agent, etc., Hill was the top defensive tackle on the Bengals roster. But Cincinnati has invested heavily at this spot, and there is a sizable cap hit for Hill, $10.83 million. Whether the Bengals cut him now or after June 1st, they would save $7.5 million. There will be examples for players where they save more by waiting until after June 1st, but it's the final year of Hill's contract. He had that great 2021 campaign, 5.5 sacks, 6 TFLs after the Giants foolishly traded for Billy Price, which was a hilarious deal. But the production hasn't been as good since then. The tackles have gone up, but the sacks have dipped, the TFLs have dipped, and the overall impact, I don't quite think has been as good as the Bengals thought they were going to have. Now, DT was a prime area of concern this offseason for Cincinnati. That's why they added Sheldon Rankins. That's why they drafted Chris Jenkins, added McKinley Jackson. B.J. Hill, I think, is still one of the best defensive tackles. But if Jenkins and or Jackson, or maybe a name we'll get to here in a second, show how good they can be with a younger, cheaper option, I could see Hill being, if not an outright cut candidate, at least a potential sneaky trade option. Next up on the list, we'll stick in the defensive tackle room, is Zachary Carter. And I think it is very much now or it's just never going to happen for the Bengals' young defensive tackle. He was a third-round pick out of Florida, a pick that I wasn't sold on. And the results so far have been, they're not very good. $1.39 million cap hit, and he's got a half sack and 2 tackles for loss to showcase it. If the Bengals were to, if you get an honest answer out of the Bengals, they'd say, yeah, we drafted Zachary Carter to be a starter in 2024. And by drafting 2 defensive tackles and signing one in the top 100, look, it's pretty clear to me that they don't believe in Zachary Carter. And this is into the Jackson Carman territory of like, hey, maybe he makes it as a depth piece, but the reliability, the trust is not there. So prediction time. Does Zach Carter make the Bengals roster this year? It's the pinned comment on today's video, and you should know what that means by now. If an ad comes on YouTube, that is fine. Don't worry about it. Instead, take advantage of that ad playing and go type in Y for yes or N for no at that pinned comment. I wonder what the move of Daxton Hill to corner means for the overall cornerback room. It might put somebody like DJ Ivey, the 7th-round pick out of Florida last year, on the roster bubble. A low cap hit, under $1 million, but plenty of salary cap savings because those 7th-round picks don't have a lot of guaranteed salary on their contracts. About $875K if he's cut now, $915 if he's cut after June 1st. The cornerback room right now sits like this. Cam Taylor-Britt, DJ Turner, Mike Hilton as your nickel. Those are your likely starters. Daxton Hill is going to compete with DJ Turner, maybe back up Mike Hilton. They spent a higher pick on Josh Newton. They seemingly like Jalen Davis. Ivy could be cornerback 6 or 7 right now for this team. If he's 7, it means he might be on the outside looking in. Now, this one would not be a surprise, but I also know how everyone feels about him, so I'm still going to include him. It's Jackson Carman, who, by the way, carries a not insignificant $2.37 million cap charge. The vast majority of that, $1.68 million, close to being nice, would be saved with a release. He is a former second-round pick, and simply put, he's been a bust for Cincinnati. It was the Jamar Chase, Penei Sewell. Ironically enough, The Bengals could make no wrong decision in the first round. Penei Sewell's been awesome for Detroit. Chase has been so good in Cincinnati. And no right decision in the second round because the other main option was Terrace Marshall, who's been bad for the Panthers. And Carman has been bad in Cincinnati. Amarius Mims is the newest first-round addition for Cincinnati. He'll be the long-term right tackle. They like Cody Ford. They have some better interior depth options in Trey Hill and Matt Lee. Honestly, I think Deontay Smith might be a better player right now than Jackson Carman. That's not saying much, but at over $2 million for a team that likes to scrimp and save on the salary cap, I don't see any major benefits to keeping Carman unless he suddenly gets good almost out of nowhere. Now, if you're excited about the Bengals' first-round pick, my guy Amarius Mims, get his rookie jersey today. Fanatics now has the right number, 71 for Mims. It's still in the pre-order stage, so it'll take a little bit for it to arrive, but get it as soon as humanly possible by going to chatsports.com/Amarius Mims. We'll put that link in both the comment section and the description of today's show. It's chatsports.com/Amarius Mims. It is unfortunate to have so many recent day 2 draft picks on this list for Cincinnati. Joseph Ossai, the edge rusher, is next up here. He flashed at times in the preseason and training camp last year, and it was surprising he was playing in the final preseason game, and then he got hurt, and he didn't really do anything in the end this past season. $1.65 million cap it. You save $1.37 million if you were to cut him. Paying him almost $2 million for 4.5 sacks in 29 games played in his career. I liked him coming out of Texas, but the impact simply has not been there. Now, I will continue to operate, as I think we all should, under the assumption Trey Hendrickson's going to be back with this team. He's not going to retire or get the trade he requested. Sam Hubbard should be healthy for week 1. You got to get Myles Murphy some playing time. Cam Sample was kind of that inside-outside piece at times last season. Cedric Johnson and Jeffrey Gunter have been recent later day 3 draft picks. Ossai could very well end up being squeezed. Now, on one hand, I don't think it would surprise anybody if Tanner Hudson got cut, because it's Tanner Hudson. He was a practice squad player last year for the Bengals. He was also their leading receiver at tight end last year, which is a kind of damning indictment on how the tight end room played overall. He was brought back on a cheap 1-year deal. Very little guaranteed money. Of his $1.15 million cap it, the Bengals would save almost all of that, just under $1 million with a release. He caught 39 passes for 352 yards last year, a lot of shorter check down stuff. Did have his first career touchdown as well. But, entering the offseason, the Bengals had 0 tight ends under contract. They bring back Drew Sample. They bring back Tanner Hudson. Then they signed Mike Gesicki. It's like, okay, that's still 3. Hudson is, maybe the backup pass catcher and the number 2/number 3 tight end. Then they draft Eric All, who might be in for a redshirt year. And then they also draft Tanner McLaughlin in the 6th round. I would bet both rookies make the roster, even if All begins the year on the PUP list or whatever. That's still 3 tight ends, 3.5 with All. The numbers game might not work out for Tanner Hudson. Another name that we were somewhat excited about last year was Trayon Williams. Samaje Perine's off in Denver. Bengals made a huge deal about needing that 3rd down back to pass protect and help in the passing game, and it was going to be Trayon Williams. He hasn't played much, right? A handful of carries in his career, and he did next to nothing this past year. By the way, of note, you saw that there's all the money to be saved on that $1.15 million cap charge. There is a workout bonus that should be paid out shortly, but that doesn't really move the needle in terms of what you're saving. It's talking like $20,000 difference there. Williams, for now, is running back 3. I put him on this list not because I think he's going to get cut today, but would anyone be surprised, depending on how the market plays out in the cut periods, if the Bengals claim a running back 3 off of waivers, or if because of the way the new kickoff return rules are set up, maybe Chris Evans actually gets to hang around somehow for 1 more year? I don't think I would be that surprised. Now, when the Bengals make roster moves, whether it's cuts or signings or the very rare trade or even just the final roster cuts get announced, we have you covered. Do not miss out. Get more free Bengals videos right here, youtube.com/Bengals TV. I hate talking about punters, but I think a punter is worth discussing here. The Bengals drafted Robbins last year, and he was, as much as a punter can be a disappointment, a pretty big disappointment. Now, he's making less than $1 million, but the Bengals have brought in competition for him after the overall numbers look fine. 76 punts, 44.3 average, 62 long, had only 20 inside the 20. He was supposed to be more of the directional kicker or punter, and he wasn't that great with some of the finesse punts, and there were some shanks on there, and that can't happen when you're an outdoor punter in Ohio when it gets to November and December, and you played at Michigan, you're supposed to be good in the cold, and it kind of didn't materialize that way. So do keep an eye then on the undrafted free agent Austin McNamara, clearly brought in as competition for Brad Robbins, was one of the better punters in this year's draft class, but most punters don't end up getting drafted. There will be a punter battle this year at training camp in the preseason. Should be fairly obvious who ends up winning that job because you can really kind of stat sheet hunt that one in terms of the competition. But it is a spot worth monitoring throughout the preseason.